Good evening, Facebook, or good afternoon if you're on the west side of the country, where I am on the west side of Los Angeles here, about a mile from the studio in which on Monday, the Fox studio, will do Undisputed from 9:30 to noon, reacting to tomorrow evening's Super Bowl. But right now, I want to react to Terrell Owens and Randy Moss in the Hall of Fame. Wow. In a minute, I'll also get into the night before concerns that are mounting in the back of my mind for the New England Patriots to win this game tomorrow evening. But before I get to my man, T.O., as I used to call him, Team Obliterator, and why he wouldn't be in my Hall of Fame, quick cameo from my daughter, our daughter, Hazel, as always, as I go live here on Facebook. I don't think I can get a hold of her. She's getting it. Whoa, I don't have her. Oh, sorry, Hazel. Sorry, okay. She's okay. Sorry, my wife Ernestine is trying to hand me Hazel, who's getting. Thank you. Okay, it's okay. She got to clean my nose before I go live. Okay. Hi, Hazel. She got a bath today. Every Saturday she gets a bath because she gets pretty dirty during the week. So Ernestine put a little bow on her, which I don't like, but that's just me. Hi, Hazel. Thank you, Hazel. Thank you, Ernestine. That's my wife, Ernestine. That's our only child. We don't have any children except me, she always says. She has a hard time riding herd on me. But that was Hazel. And now on to subject I've written about and talked about. Going back to my first year in the Bay Area covering the San Francisco 49ers, which featured Jeff Garcia throwing to Terrell Owens. And I got to tell you, during that season, which was 2001, it was right after 9/11, if you had told me during that season that Terrell Owens would be in the Pro Football Hall of Fame, trust me, laugh out loud, literally laugh out loud. I would have said, you're joking, right? Saturday Night Live routine, right? But that was because I knew so many people on that football team and on that coaching staff and in that front office, which included the great and late Bill Walsh, with whom I got close. I love Bill Walsh. Genius. Greatest coach ever. Greatest personnel eye ever. Just pure genius. And Bill Walsh was driven a little crazy by Terrell Owens. And the first day I got to know Bill Walsh was because he called me after a radio show I did on KMBR in San Francisco. And he said, look, we need to sit and talk about Terrell Owens. And he loved Terrell. He always told me Terrell Owens was the smartest receiver up on the chalkboard, the whiteboard, that he'd ever coached. I think he coached Jerry Rice, John Taylor, I could go on. But he thought Terrell Owens' football mind was extraordinary. And yet, the rest of his mind, Bill was very concerned about because Terrell had some issues from his childhood. We all have issues from our childhood. I'm not knocking or condemning Terrell for this. I'm just telling you what went on. And Bill Walsh said, we have tried to reach him. We've got team psychologists. We've got outside psychiatrists. We've tried all kinds of sessions with him, and we just can't reach him. We can't coach him. We can't get him into our team concept. And it was really hurting Bill Walsh because he saw such extraordinary ability in Terrell Owens. And this isn't to say that Terrell wasn't successful on the field, because obviously Jeff Garcia to Terrell Owens was one of the great connections in the history of pro football. But if you could have lived with me through that year and heard, starting with Bill Walsh, the issues with Terrell Owens, and going to the GM, Terry Donahue, the issues with Terrell Owens, and going to Steve Mariucci, the coach, the mounting issues with Terrell Owens, and then player after player after player. And here's the irony of this. Trust me, anybody who read I got something in my eye, what I wrote in those days, at first I defended Terrell. He's a great player. Played with rage, man. played like he was kind of Russell Westbrook before Westbrook. He played crazy hard every play. Randy Moss took plays off. He admitted publicly, take some plays off. Some days he didn't feel like it. Terrell Owens played crazy hard. So I defended him, and player after player would stop me. Some of them introduced themselves to me. Some first would send me anonymous sort of email kind of notes, and then they'd pull me aside. I can't tell you how many players said, "You have no idea what you're doing defending this guy. He is tearing our team apart. He's impossible." Because he was starting to turn on the starting quarterback, Jeff Garcia. And I must admit, my instincts have always been pretty good about players, and I hung in for a while with that one, and that's the only time I ever really swung and missed early on a player, where I just didn't get it. And finally, I saw the light, because Terrell Owens tore that team apart, and it was a really good team. It had, if it had gotten hot at the right time, it had Super Bowl potential. And yet, it got so bad, we were in Chicago for a game against the Bears. Terrell had a bad second half. They had a bad fourth quarter. They had a lead. They blew the lead. Steve Mariucci against a guy he had coached with coming up the ladder, a guy I'm not sure they were close friends, but they were good friends, Dick Duran. And Terrell sat at his locker. I was right there after the game, and he just went off on Steve Mariucci and accused Mooch, as they called him, of taking his foot off the gas in the fourth quarter for the sake of his good friend across the field on the other sideline, the coach of the Bears at that point, Dick Duran. Boy, that's a charge. That you're saying you're throwing the game, you're trying to take it easy, not throwing it, but you're trying to pull back to make it look a little better for your friend Dick Duran, and you end up losing the game. Whew. Boy, it was a powerful quote. And then I did a long interview with Terrell in which he hinted at some racial mistreatment from Steve Mariucci. Maybe so. I don't know. I don't have any way. I asked Mariucci about it. He just was stunned. Like, what are you talking about? I have no idea. Nobody's ever said a word about that to me, any other player, blah, blah, blah. But that was Terrell. And there was so much blame deflecting going on. There was a game right after 9/11 in San Francisco against the arch rival, then dominant in the division, St. Louis Rams of Kurt Warner. Remember, this is 2001. You know what happened at the end of that year in the Super Bowl was the launching of the Patriot dynasty. And Terrell Owens in that game, I can't remember exactly how many, but he must have dropped 3 big balls that were like potential touchdowns where he was just gone or open. And he was a great run after catch guy, 4.5-ish speed, maybe 4.5-ish, something like that, but more like 4.5. But he could obviously really run after catch, and he just dropped, I don't know, he might have dropped 4 big balls in that game, and that ended up being the game. This is the game right after 9/11. Check it out. You can probably find it on YouTube. I was there, and Terrell sat almost like comatose at his locker for like 15 straight minutes after the media had been allowed in, just staring. And he just couldn't talk, wouldn't talk. I never seen anything quite like it. And if you followed Terrell's career, these are shaky stats because they're kind of, everybody keeps them differently because it's kind of subjective what a drop is. I might see a drop differently than you see a drop, but whatever. There were at least 3 times that some of the people who kept drops, some of the services who kept drops, had Terrell leading the league in drops. And I was around a lot, watched a lot, and he was a ball dropper, a big moment ball dropper. And it bothered me, and it bothered the 49ers enough that once they got through another year with Terrell, that's when I nicknamed him Team Obliterator, Terry Donahue finally just said, enough. He is more trouble than he is worth. And you remember the fiasco trying to get him. First, it looked like he was going to Baltimore and Ray Lewis. That might have been the greatest thing that ever happened to Terrell. But one thing led to another. Paperwork didn't get filed by Owens' agent at the time, and he winds up in Philadelphia. And I was fascinated. I thought, well, maybe this will be the change of scenery that he needs, because it had gotten so bad just to put San Francisco to bed. There's a game, ironically, against Randy Moss, and I'm foggy. It must have been the next year, 2002, pretty sure. But it was at the old Metrodome in Minneapolis, and I was there. And every time that Terrell went up against Moss, he got mossed. And this is just me. Randy Moss is on a whole nother level from Terrell Owens. I don't care what you say. And off the field, they both had their issues. They're different kinds of issues. But I'll say right up front, I don't think it's fair that Randy Moss got straight into the Hall of Fame on the first ballot if Terrell Owens didn't. But I know what the voters are thinking. It's just eye test. Randy Moss just revolutionized the game. He ran 4.2 at like 6'4", 64 inches, ran 4.240. And that 98 year alone, that was just like, for me, Hall of Fame is transcendent. It's weird. Here's my point about Hall of Fame. If you ask me, is he a Hall of Famer? I'm going gut feeling. If I hesitate for 1 second and have to think, he's not. But that's my Hall of Fame. That's my criterion. Would be, that's it. As simple as that. If you ask me, is Tom Brady a Hall of Famer? Well, obviously you just say, yes, he's a Hall of Famer. I don't know. Let me think of some long time. Obviously like Jerry Rice. We can argue all day whether he's the greatest receiver. But if you'd ask me during Jerry Rice's career, Hall of Fame? Well, yes. Yes, he's in the Hall of Fame. I mean, there's just no doubt. A lot of people, even Bill Walsh, thought there was a period of his career when he was the best football player ever. I think he said that at his ceremony when they had Jerry Rice Day at that was Terrell Owens Day. I was there for that game. I was still in Chicago, but the point is, Randy Moss gets in because he's transcendent. He just repped like in 1998. And by the way, I was working in Chicago then. I just pounded the table. Bears have to take Randy Moss. You just have to take him. He's a life changer. No, he showed up late for their interview when they flew him to Chicago. He's a bad guy. He's got this issue. Notre Dame, this problems. He had this big fight issue, blah, blah, back in high school, blah, 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 blah. I said, I don't care. He's transcendent. He's going to change your life. And he goes up to Minneapolis with Dante Culpepper throwing home runs to him. And remember what he did to Dallas on Thanksgiving Day that year? My God. He was taking it out on every team that passed on him in the draft because he wanted to be a Dallas Cowboy. So they end up playing faithfully on Thanksgiving that year. This is 98, Thanksgiving. And he caught 3 balls that day at Texas Stadium. And those 3 balls went for like, I won't get this exactly right, but it was like 51-yard touchdown, 53-yard touchdown, and 53-yard touchdown. 3 balls, cross-country touchdowns. He just ran through defenses. He was the equivalent for you Cowboy fans of Bullet Bob Hayes, the Olympic gold medal sprinter who just revolutionized the game in the 60s under Tom Landry with Don Meredith throwing home runs to him. He changed the way you had to defend the deep ball in the National Football League. Well, so did Randy Moss. So when you ask me, because I witnessed so many head-to-heads, and I know it's not quite fair when it's receiver on one team versus receiver, and that drives receivers crazy. They're the divas, and they're the head cases of pro football because they can't control getting the ball. Terrell Owens wanted to play basketball because you can get a hold of the basketball. And he had this fantasy he could be a pro basketball player, which he couldn't. I've seen him play. He's a good player, but obviously at 6'3", what are you going to do? Play point guard, but he's a little stiff. But the point is he loved basketball, and I get it because you could actually touch the ball a whole lot in basketball. And he'll go to the celebrity game at the All-Star Weekend and be the MVP. Way to go. But the point is, against Moss, he would just get Moss because Randy Moss would just rise and shine. And in that game at the Dome that day in Minneapolis, again, I was there. I forget the stats. I used them on Undisputed the other day, but it was like Moss caught like 8 for 160. It was just outrageous what he was doing. And Terrell had 5 for 55, and he got mossed. and it just killed him. So that was the famous rant up and down in front of the bench. Greg Knapp, the coordinator, was down on the sideline, sitting on the bench, just trying to ignore him, and back and forth, ranted Terrell Owens. And listen, Terrell, I have high regard for him because he's so media savvy. He knew he needed to take some of the focus off himself and how Randy Moss was lighting him up and lighting up that stage. And all of a sudden, if he could create a controversy, that would be the story the next day. Well, not only did he create that controversy, but he goes straight in the locker room and gets literally up on a box, which became his soapbox. And Terrell Owens said that Jeff Garcia, his quarterback, needed to be demoted. Jeff Garcia was really good, a Pro Bowl quarterback. He needed to be demoted? Jeff Garcia did a lot of great things for Terrell Owens. He really did. Jeff, again, an overachiever out of Canada, and I get that. But still, he had to kind of wind up to throw it, but he could really throw it. And Terrell Owens wanted a former 7th-round pick named Tim Rattay to be the quarterback. Well, this is outrageous, but it was brilliant on his part because the next day all the stories were ranting back and forth at Greg Knapp, as I called him, Greg Take a Nap. I was not a fan. He's still afloat. I think he's Atlanta's quarterback coach now. He's been all over the league. But Tim Rattay for Jeff Garcia was so outrageous that it just exploded into the headlines and the talk shows all the next day. So Terrell brilliantly took the focus off how he got mossed and on to what was going on behind the scenes. But all this added up to, finally, Terry Donahue saying, I'm out, man. What am I getting in return? More trouble than he's worth. Couldn't reach him, couldn't sort of bring him into their fold. There's no way he could be a team leader. He was a solo act who was often just completely out of control. And he had gotten into the dances and he'd become a national celebrity. And they were funny. They were great. He and Chad Johnson belong in a separate wing of the Pro Football Hall of Fame of entertainers, because both of them are gifted entertainers with their get your popcorn ready and taking the popcorn from the cheerleader. And I was there the night, it was a Monday night game in Seattle when Terrell ran into the little box behind the end zone in that new Seattle stadium. And from I think it was his accountant or somebody handed him a Sharpie. Handed him a football. He had the Sharpie in his sock, and he signed the football. It was brilliant. Just great. Great self-promoter, Terrell Owens. And, yeah, he goes on to Philadelphia, and I thought, okay, he and McNabb are tight, soulmates, roommates in camp. Maybe this will be good for him. Maybe he'll find his Valhalla in Philadelphia. And they had a pretty strong connection for a little while, and you know what happened. He predictably turned on Donovan McNabb, and he's still turning on him. They're still taking shots at each other. And when they finally got to that Super Bowl against the Patriots, the last time Philly played the Patriots, they lost, obviously, in the fourth quarter. And then in the weeks afterwards, predictably, Terrell Owens accused McNabb of hyperventilating. Did he say he threw up in the huddle? Or like he was just gagging, literally choking in the huddle. And what looked like a love fest turned into a hate fest between those two. And then, of course, Terrell Owens turned on his coordinator, Brad Childress, and there was a big report about they nearly came to blows. And Childress screamed him out of a meeting, an offensive meeting. And then Andy Reid got into it, and Terrell, they were lovey-dovey to start with, and then it just got ugly. And I've talked to a number of players. I've known a bunch of players from that team, worked with a bunch of players from that team on ESPN. They don't like Terrell Owens. They respected his ability, but they just said he tore their team apart. Okay? And that team finally sent him home. Do you remember this? They just sent him home. Whatever that rule is, he was out. And again, it's so bad. It's just splitting another team that had a chance. And obviously they got to the Super Bowl, but I always bring this up. My partner Shannon Sharp is obviously in the Hall of Fame. He's there tonight in Minneapolis, and he loves him some Terrell Owens. He's got sort of an affinity for him because Shannon came from a pretty tough background. in rural Georgia, and Terrell came from a pretty rough background. Again, both raised by grandmothers in part. Shannon had a strong grandfather also, but I think Terrell was just grandmother in rural Alabama. So Shannon has affinity for him, and Shannon gets angry about why Terrell wasn't, this was the third try for Terrell, but why the first 2 times he didn't get voted into the Hall of Fame. And I say, well, then you just don't get it, because I'm going to say this one more time. I've said it many, many times. I don't hate Terrell Owens. I just saw too much. I talked to too many people who did not think he was Hall of Fame caliber. I kind of like Terrell. I've talked to him many times, interviewed him many times on, and obviously for newspaper, and then had him on TV, back on ESPN. We've had him on Undisputed, again, 9:30 to noon Eastern Time, Fox Sports 1. We've had him on, I don't know, I've lost track, 3 times? And maybe we'll have him on again next week. I don't know. I'd be happy to have him on. And I told Shannon on the air the other day, from my heart, I'll be happy for Terrell, because this has haunted him for so long, if he does get in the Hall of Fame. And I also predicted he would get in the Hall of Fame, because he's so media savvy. He's basically conducted his own Hall of Fame campaign that's been built on shaming those voters into, oh, you've got it out for me. It's personal. It's a vendetta. I don't think so. I think they just are going on the facts. But I do think he successfully shamed them, and he turned himself into a sympathetic figure. And I think I had something to do with that. I think I helped that. Not that I want any credit for it, because I don't. But I don't hate Terrell. I enjoy having him on the show. I enjoy sparring with him, bantering with him just about sports. I think he's smart. I think he's unique. I think he has a rare sort of vision and sense of humor. And we've had him on with Eric Dickerson. We've had him on several times with Chad Johnson. And I just enjoy that spark, that dynamic. So I don't hate him, but I know too much. I just talked to too many of those Eagles. It was just so ugly and bad that guy's disqualified from my Hall of Fame. I'm sorry, he's disqualified. Then he goes to Dallas. And obviously, Jerry Jones is all about box office. And Terrell is all-time box office. He can make some big catches, but he can fill those seats. Not that Jerry needs to fill them exactly, but he can build those ratings. He can explode those ratings. And obviously, to bring Terrell Owens to the place where once upon a time, before he was Terrell Owens, that was the ultimate first welcome to the world for Terrell Owens, was when he ran to the Star at Old Texas Stadium and did his, on the Star. He stood on the Star, and it was the ultimate sign of disrespect for the Cowboys. And kid, what was his name, Teague from Alabama, charged him and knocked him off the Star. And those were the days the 49ers were way better than the Cowboys, and he was rubbing their nose in it right on their sacred Star. Way to go, Terrell. So the prospect of Jerry Jones bringing that guy who had defamed the Star to Jerry World was just outrageously great for Jerry. But a Hall of Fame coach named Bill Parcells was coaching the team and wanted nothing to do with Terrell Owens, and I couldn't blame him. I'm sorry, I couldn't blame him. And he wouldn't even refer to Terrell by name. He called him the player this, the player that. And I'm sorry, let me backtrack 1 second, because I got off track on this. I should finish up the Philly before I forget it, because this is very important. Terrell did get to the one Super Bowl with the Eagles, and let me finish that story. Remember, Terrell didn't play because he got the name horse collar came. The rule came from the play on which Terrell got horse collar, got yanked down by the back of the pads, and broke his leg. And so he missed the first 2 playoff games won by the Eagles and Donovan McNabb to get them to the Super Bowl. And I've had several players off that team tell me that as much as Terrell gutted it up using that, hyperbaric chamber, he tried everything to get the leg right in time for the Super Bowl, that it was somewhat of a handicap to Donovan McNabb. I always make this case, Brady can be even better without Gronkowski because he gets so Gronk-centric. All the bad throws Brady makes, the forced throws, are always trying to get it to big old 87 against double coverage. And sometimes the forces go there. And obviously, last year there's no Gronk for the last 8 games. They won the Super Bowl. And this year, there's no Gronk in the second half against Jacksonville and no Edelman. And they beat the hottest defense, the breakthrough coming-of-age defense, Saxonville, in the second half with no Gronk. So the point was, several of the Eagles made the case to me, they thought McNabb, who by that time was do not invite him with Terrell Owens. They were at each other's throats. But McNabb felt too TO conscious, like I got to force the ball to him, and he couldn't run. And Belichick knew he couldn't run, so they let him catch whatever it was, like 9 balls for no touchdowns. Couldn't threaten the end zone with Terrell Owens because he couldn't run by anybody the way he could when his leg was right, and his leg clearly wasn't right. But whatever, he got to the one Super Bowl, had good numbers in the Super Bowl, and they lost the game. And the only way they got back in the game in the fourth quarter was on a deep pass from McNabb to that little speedster they had, Greg Lewis. So, now on to Dallas, and some great things happened on the field between Romo and T.O. I give you that. But some bad things started happening off the field, starting with the head coach versus the player. Remember, he'd show up Parcells in camp. He'd put on some Lance Armstrong gear and sit on the bike and just, it was like sticking his tongue out at Parcells. And bad went to worse, and there was that incident that I don't know exactly what happened, but it got ugly where the 911 call from his townhouse and his publicist, and she was so upset because it looked like Terrell had tried to take his own life. And then he said, that's not what happened. And then she had that famous quote about I can't remember what the number she was. What was it? 5? I should have looked this up before I started, but there are 10 million reasons why he wouldn't take his own life, or whatever his salary was at that point, as in dollars. But Terrell had some issues. And he was having some issues that day, and thank God those issues didn't take him completely over the edge, and he's still with us. And yet, internally, the Cowboys began to come apart, and it had a lot to do with Romo coming apart, with Jessica Simpson, and I don't blame it all on Terrell, but those were the days when I grew up a Cowboy fan, went to my first game when I was 10 years old, in their second year of existence. Saw the St. Louis Cardinals play at in the old Cotton Bowl, where that's still there, but where the Cowboys first played. And those were the days when I was out. I was off the bandwagon. I couldn't be a Cowboy fan in those days. I just didn't like the vibe of that team. I couldn't support it. I just couldn't watch it. It just drove me crazy. And obviously, Romo goes to Cancun, and Jason Witten was involved in that, and Jessica and Jason's wife, and it was a bad look. And then they came back, and they lost to Eli at home, as Eli was on the way to upsetting Tom Brady in the Super Bowl, 2007. Big year, great year. That was post, was that Wade Phillips? But anyway, so the point was that it just ended badly again for Terrell Owens in Dallas. And he had a big incident in which he accused Romo of starting to throw only to Jason Witten, and he got into it with Todd Haley, did Terrell Owens, the receivers coach at that point. Again, Haley's had all kinds of issues with other players, including Ben Roethlisberger, but there was a big shouting match battle there, and Jason Witten was very upset about it. And I heard from one Cowboy with whom I was very close, and he witnessed on the practice field that day, Jason Witten went up to Terrell Owens before practice, and he said, let's go right here. You want to do it? Let's just do it right here. Let's settle this right here, right now. And according to my eyewitness, Terrell wanted no part of Jason Witten. I'm not sure Terrell could handle Jason Witten. Jason's a big boy. What is he, 6'5", 250 maybe, 260, but whatever. He was steamed, and I'm glad nothing happened, but that's what I was told. And so it degenerated into that. And so another team he was on didn't break through as it should have because they went that one year, 13-3. And again, some team obliteration by team obliterator. Well, so he's 3 for 3, and then he went on to other teams, and he and Chad had some success, but not playoff success together, obviously, in Cincinnati, and then he went to Buffalo, and then it looked like Pete Carroll was going to include him in the Seattle system, and he cut him in the preseason, which is pretty shocking to me. Terrell takes great care of himself. He's been in great shape, and as Shannon always points out, no off-field issues as far as arrest issues. So I give you that. If you're going to dock Terrell a couple of times from being in the Hall of Fame, if you're going to use his, it's not even off the field, it's locker room, huddle, internal negative impact. If you're going to keep him out of the Hall of Fame over that, all those issues at 3 different teams, then you have to penalize Randy Moss once. I thought that was hypocritical. Like, Randy, I don't want to go into all the gory details, but there are a lot of gory details on Randy Moss. A lot. And we've talked about him often on Undisputed. Again, you can see us 9:30 to noon Eastern Time, Fox Sports 1. We will be there Monday. That's going to be a huge, hot show. And by the way, thank you for all who are watching for our ratings. They've just been explosive, and I'm so thankful. Thank you, God, and thank you to all you people out there. We've just been on a ratings roll, and we appreciate that very much because it has nothing to do with us and everything to do with you. So thank you for that, for watching this, and for watching 9:30 to noon Eastern daily on Fox Sports 1. But again, how can you put Randy Moss in after all the stuff that he did off the field and some of it on the field? It was a lot. He had an arrest and this and that. It's just it's a long laundry list of stuff. It's just stuff. Okay? So I think the voters are just saying Randy's just that good. It just outweighed and overcame and erased all the rest. And obviously there are a lot of people in a lot of Hall of Fames, not just footballs, who were bad actors. We get that. But for Terrell, I was just so involved. I talked to so many people. Again, players, coaches, front office, owners. I talked to so many who just found it impossible to deal with. Well, that's just not Hall of Fame behavior. That's just me. And I'll never back off that. If I I don't vote for the Hall of Fame, but if you ask me who's in my Hall of Fame, Terrell Owens is just not. And frankly, deep down, gut feeling, and I've never backed off this, I'm ashamed for the Hall of Fame that Terrell's in it. I just am. When you add up all the team obliteration, it's just wrong. And you can show me all the numbers, and I get all the numbers, and they're spectacular. But he wasn't a transcendent player. He was really good. There's also this hall, this sort of fictional hall that I came up with, the Hall of Very Good. I'll put Terrell in the Hall of Very Good. I just don't think he belongs in the Hall of Fame. But he conducted a very shrewd media campaign. He created incredible sympathy for himself. And I think he sort of shamed enough of those voters at a politically sensitive time that they finally said, okay, he's been punished enough. So that leads me to my final point about the Hall of Fame. Punishment. This is absurd to me. This is so arrogant. It's such empowerment for these voters that they get to punish various players by keeping them out once, twice, 3, 4. What was Shannon? 3 times. I took him, Shannon Sharp, my partner on Undisputed, 9:30 to noon Eastern, Fox Sports 1. Shannon, it took 3 times to get in. Is Shannon in the Hall of Fame? Yeah, he's just in the Hall of Fame. So why didn't he go in the first time? I don't know. So you try to pick his case to pieces, and sometimes it depends how many are going in at a certain time. I don't care. You're either in or you're not. Ray Lewis, there's a good one. Ray Lewis got in. Did he have off the field? Yep, he did. Is Ray Lewis a Hall of Famer? Yes. He's just a big yes. It's just yes. To me, in the pro football context, heck, I'll go this far. In the sports context, I hope I'm not forgetting anybody, Ray Lewis was the greatest leader ever. Yes. Like Brian Dawkins. I know Brian Dawkins. I worked with him at ESPN. I love him. But if you ask me, is he a Hall of Famer, I have to think for a second. I don't know. Would he be? He's not a first ballot Hall of Famer, so he got in on a second ballot. Well, he's either in or out. I don't know. I want him to be in because I like him. And you want to talk about salt of the earth, high character. That man has character. The flip side of Terrell Owens as far as a teammate and team leader. Okay? So I'll give you that one. But what did it take Chris Carter? I've lost track. Wasn't it like the 7th or 8th time? Okay, what is it? My teammate, obviously, on First Things First, which precedes Undisputed on Fox Sports 1 every weekday morning. But is he in or out? He's either a Hall of Famer or he's not. Don't punish people. Don't discount them. Do they have asterisks? Should they have a number beside their, like engraved on their bust? Like, should Shannon have a 3 on there because it took him 3 times? Should Terrell have a 3 because it took 3 times? Should Chris have I can't remember what it was, 7 or 8 times, whatever it was, 5 times, I can't remember what it was. Just outrageous numbers of times where you have to just sweat and fret and feel shamed by the process where you don't get the call. You wait for the call and you don't get the call. And then you finally get in and it's like, I finally got in. But it took me X times. Okay. Joy Taylor, our moderator on Undisputed, 9:30 to noon Eastern, Fox Sports 1. A year ago, her brother Jason Taylor, obviously, got first ballot Hall of Famer. I'm good with that. He's a game changer. Tom Brady wrote him this beautiful endorsement, just beautiful. Like, it was one guy Tom Brady just feared because they just couldn't figure out how to double block him. They could put 2 men on him, they couldn't control him, and he often took the game over from his defensive end position. Okay? Well, that's transcendent. That's Tom Brady, the greatest quarterback ever, saying, hey, I never faced anybody better than you, so he's in. Okay? So he's a first ballot Hall of Famer, and I don't know. Either you're in or you're not. So I know this would be rough, but severe. It just seems like one shot. You get one shot, you're either in or you're out. But I'm putting the Hall of Fame on my highest pedestal of, I don't want to water it down. After a while, you say, oh, he's a good guy. Let's put him in. He was a good player. Remember, he had a couple of big moments. Let's put him in. Let's put everybody in. The NBA Hall of Fame or the Basketball Hall of Fame, everybody goes in it. We don't even talk about it on Undisputed because who cares? It's not like a close call. Baseball, it's a hard call. You got the whole PED issue going on. Barry Bonds, is he a Hall of Famer? Before he got big. Barry Bonds, in or out? In. And he was the greatest hitter I ever saw. He won 8 Gold Gloves before he got big. MVP, what do you have, 3 MVPs before he got big? Roger Clemens had, 3 Cy Youngs before he resorted to joining the party, to keeping up with the steroidal Joneses or the HGH Joneses? Yeah. Roger Clemens, Hall of Fame? Yes. Barry Bonds, yes. Randy Moss, yes. But all the junk, if that's the way you're going to do it, and that's the way I would have done it on Terrell, then Randy should have been punished. That's just fair to Terrell, quote unquote. I put quotes around it. Punished one time. But he wasn't. And Shannon Sharp made a great point on Undisputed the other day that, it has softened up Randy's image, Randy Moss's image, for him to be on ESPN and cut up and clown around and joke and kind of be the life of the set, and it's softened his image up. And I do agree with that, but I went through a time when Lynn Swann couldn't get in the Hall of Fame, going back to the famous Steelers of the 70s into the early 80s, but it was Swann and Stallworth on as loaded a football team as I have ever seen. In fact, I've covered the Super Bowl. It's my first one as the columnist at the Dallas Morning News. Was that Super Bowl 13, and you want to talk about Hall of Famers, it was just everybody, everywhere was a Hall of Famer. You just looked around the field. I've lost track. I'd have to count them up. But on both sides of the ball, it was the most Hall of Fame talent I've ever seen on any one football field. And not in the Hall of Fame as my man Drew Pearson, who was as clutch a receiver as I ever saw. The opposite of Terrell Owens, you can't do his numbers because they didn't throw the ball that much in that era. But if I showed you big catches, starting with the catch, the Hail Mary, as Roger Staubach named it, in Minnesota against those Vikings, outside, it was just one huge clutch catch after another. Even the Thanksgiving Day catch that lives in infamy in Washington because it was on the big stage and thrown by the backup quarterback Clint Longley after Roger got knocked out of the game, and it went to Drew Pearson. I can show you 10 catches he made that were just huge, and he's not in the Hall of Fame. And it's just because there was a glut of Hall of Famers from both the Steelers and the Cowboys of that era. So I can just go on, but the bottom line is, seriously, I'm happy for Terrell. I'm happy for him because I know how much this means to him. This is going to be great for his self-image. This is going to be great for him off the field, as he goes into, because he's still hanging on like he still thinks he can play. But I think this will free his mind up a little bit to go on to his second career or whatever he's going to do. He finally made it. And just for his sake, from my heart, I'm happy for him. He just wouldn't have gotten my vote. And I promise you tonight, there are a lot of people who knew exactly what went on in San Francisco when Terrell was there, and in Philadelphia when Terrell was there, and in Dallas when Terrell was there, who are just shaking their heads that guy got in the Hall of Fame. Trust me, that's my bottom line. Now, before I let you go, and I'm going to do another Facebook Live before the game tomorrow evening. What is it, 3:30-ish here, 6:30 Eastern time. I'm obviously in Los Angeles. But I'll do something in the hour before the game with my final thoughts. But I must admit, at this hour, sort of on Christmas Eve for me, I'm such a huge fan of the Super Bowl, I'm concerned about the Patriots I picked before the season to win this Super Bowl. It just doesn't feel right to me at this hour. I went ahead and picked them yesterday on Undisputed because I'm not going to flip-flop like somebody else I know. But, by the way, Shannon Sharp is so tormented by this pick because he doesn't like Tom Brady. I get it, and I don't get it, but I get it. But he's lost to Tom Brady so many times publicly that he finally said, I can't beat him, so I got to join him. It's your basic CYA pick, so he's going to pick the pay. He picked him before the year started, which just outraged me because he's just trying to cover himself just in case it happens again. And it's driving him crazy that Brady is playing at an MVP level. And yet, he became, just because I'm a Cowboy fan, then it backed him into becoming an Eagles fan this year, and more important, a Carson Wentz fan, just to fight against Dak Prescott. And I will swear to you that the Eagles wouldn't be in the Super Bowl if Nick Foles hadn't had to replace Carson Wentz. I don't think Carson Wentz could have gotten them to this game. That's just me. Nick Foles played extraordinary football in the second half against Atlanta, and from the start against the Vikings. That was a tour de force game against the number one ranked defense by Nick Foles. It was in Philly where that team just plays a lot better. And that's the only reason I'm hanging on to my pick, is that this is obviously at a neutral site. But Shannon Sharp is stuck because if the Patriots, let's say if Nick Foles beats Tom Brady in the Super Bowl, kind of goes Eli, except that would be even beyond Eli to a lot of people. I mean, Eli was the number one pick in the draft. Nick Foles was, a third-round pick? And Nick Foles is seen as kind of a career backup quarterback, even though he's got in his career 66 touchdown passes to only 29 interceptions. But Shannon Sharp is, he's worried that if Nick Foles wins, then there's going to be a huge quarterback controversy. I don't care what you say. The coaching staff is going to have to sit back, depending on the outcome of this game, and say, my God, what just happened? Nick Foles did that? And it's going to be hard. I know they'll want to go back to Carson Wentz, but there's going to be those in the locker room are going to say, wait a second, are we sure about this? And it's going to create a controversy. But the point is, the reason I'm concerned about the Patriots are intangibles. The motivation of the Eagles to get to sit back this week as Tom Brady dropped his episodes of Tom versus Time, his documentary, which is the equivalent of religious zealotry. Tom's on fire with the teachings and preachings of his trainer, Alex Guerrero. Pliability, lengthening the muscles through stretching, all kinds of, obviously, physical therapy from Alex Guerrero, and a whole new approach to nutrition. All I hear about is avocado ice cream, but I think that's not exactly the approach to nutrition. That's just his dessert of choice. Whatever. The point is, Tom believes it, so I'm great with it. I'm a Brady fan. A lot of people aren't. But you want to talk about arrogant and brazen, to schedule and drop these episodes through the week leading up to the Super Bowl? Wow. Shocking. Because you're just daring the Eagles. You're saying, this is how I do it. Come and get me. And the Eagles are no joke. Nick Foles is no joke. He won't play poorly tomorrow. Nick Foles won't be Nick Folds, F-O-L-D-S, tomorrow. Trust me on that. He'll play well. Will he play well enough to beat Tom Brady? That's what I'm clinging to with my pick. I called it lower scoring, 20-17. I'm still going back and forth about that. But the point is, that's brazen against a team that was the quote-unquote underdog wearing the masks. And they're serious. And the one way to beat Tom Brady, the only way to beat Tom Brady is with a pass rush. And they have a deep pass rush. The Falcons, and before them the Seahawks in the Super Bowls, ran out of gas in the fourth quarter, rushing the passer. Or that's combined with the fact that Dante Scarnecchia, the underrated, even though he's been there forever, New England offensive line coach, as the game goes on, his fixes are incredible. All of his nuances and tweaks and adjustments are beautiful because they start to block it up, depending on how you're going to attack them. But the Eagles can attack with that wide nine. We had Mike Martz, former coach of the Rams, obviously against the Patriots in the first Super Bowl of the Belichick run. And Mike Martz said that wide nine of Jim Schwartz is hellacious to try to figure out how to block. It's just you can practice against it, and it's just hard because they're splitting the ends way outside the tackles. And they're deep because they can bring the kid Derek Barnett in, or they can bring Chris Long in. And they have a depth of pass rushers outside and inside, starting with Fletcher Cox, who is just a monster. He might be virtually unblockable. And if they can't stop him up the middle, like Malik Jackson was back in the days of Denver in the AFC Championship game, in which Denver and Von Miller got after Tom Brady and beat him, then it's going to be a long day for Tom Brady. The Giants, obviously, especially in the first Eli Super Bowl, could just flat out get after Tom Brady. And that was Strahan and Tuck and Human Euro. It's a lot of firepower. These guys have a lot of firepower, but they're also going to be on fire because of Tom versus Time. And then it just stunned me that Belichick would be seen publicly on a Thursday night ahead of the Super Bowl going to a basketball game. Really? He went to the T-Wolves game. Man, I don't know. It just got me. That's not Bill Belichick. That's just not. That's not. It's a break with tradition. I'm going to throw this out, and I've said it on Undisputed. Belichick lost the power struggle with Brady. He just did. It was Tom versus Time now, but going back to the first of the year, it was Tom versus Bill. And Bill wanted to go forward clearly with Jimmy Garoppolo. Sign him long term, let this be the last hurrah. And it would have been right on schedule with Belichick's plan because he would want to go win the final sixth Super Bowl with Tom and then let Tom walk into the sunset. And if he chose to go elsewhere and play, he could do that, which Tom would have chosen to do. But Bill would be betting against him because he would feel like he had hit the wall at 40. He's betting on Father Time. You know, Tom versus Time. You can put Father in front of Time. And he would bet on Father Time, but he lost the bet because his owner, who calls Tom Tommy, as we saw in episode 4 of Tom versus Time, they FaceTime each other all the time. and it's like a son to him. And Robert Kraft said, nope, sorry, you will trade Jimmy Garoppolo at the deadline. And then Bill sabotaged the Patriots to me, just gave him away to a young head coach, and Kyle Shanahan, that Belichick loves kind of like a son, and he loves Jimmy G kind of like a son. And so he let his two young men that he's mentored join forces in San Francisco. Here, you can have him for only a second-round pick. Cleveland would have been given a 1-2 and God knows what else to get Jimmy Garoppolo. No, he's not going to send him to Cleveland to quarterback hell. He's going to send him out to the West Coast to those guys, and Jimmy G is already off to the races. But there's got to be a part of Belichick. This is just my 2 cents from a distance. There's got to be a part of Belichick that wouldn't mind losing the Super Bowl, especially if Tom had a bad game. Then he could sit back and say, I told you so, Robert. Now you're stuck. We don't have a young quarterback. We don't have a near future. What are you going to do now, Robert? Age just caught up and sacked Tom Brady. What are you going to do now? So there's some part, I don't know what it is, 20% of Belichick, I believe, wouldn't mind losing this Super Bowl. Obviously, it would hurt his legacy, but it might be worth it now that he already has 5 rings, and this would be his 8th Super Bowl. To go 5-3 wouldn't be the end of the world to his legacy, but it might help his legacy if he was proven right about wanting to get rid of Tom Brady now, as opposed to Brady saying he wants to play 4 more years, and Robert Kraft's like, I'm not betting against this guy. He's made me a lot of money. He's won me a lot of bragging rights. I'm going to ride his coattails into the distant future. 4 more years of Tom Brady. Okay? I'm betting on Kraft because I'm betting on Brady. I don't love Belichick. I don't love his cheating legacy. I don't love the fact that Mike Martz said yesterday on Undisputed, just blurted it out when I asked him about what happened cheating-wise in that first Super Bowl, Rams versus Patriots, Brady's first year starting. He said, I was told that they videotaped all of our practices that week. What? Belichick somehow videotaped or had videotaped all of your practices? And Martz is like, yeah, I didn't really care about it because we didn't install anything new. We're just doing exactly what we've been doing. Remember, they're the greatest show on turf. Big favorites, 14-point favorites in that game. So Martz is saying, I just didn't really care because I don't know what they could have learned from watching the tape of our practices. They weren't running any trick plays. They weren't going to do anything dramatically different. And he said, we just went into the game and did exactly what we did. And, of course, Belichick took away Marshall Faulk. And they got up and punished the receivers, got physical with them. And they wrecked the psyche of the St. Louis Rams. And still and yet and still, it took a long drive engineered by that kid Tom Brady with John Madden sitting up in the booth saying, shut it down. Just play for overtime. 17 all. Don't put the kid in harm's way. Don't do that. Don't risk it. Save him from himself. And Brady goes, completion. 5 big completions and moved from they started deep, 20-something. I had it yesterday on Undisputed. I can't remember exactly the yard line, but it was a long drive, even to set up a 49-yard field goal at the buzzer. Adam Vinatieri, could argue the clutchest kicker ever in pro football, but it got set up, 5 big completions from Tom Brady. Okay? So Belichick cheated? Got busted once for sure for cheating in Spygate. And then the Carolina Panthers they're still openly accusing Belichick of videotaping, spying on their walkthrough on Saturday. Okay, so I've lost some respect for Bill Belichick, but is he? I'm just going to throw this out. Is it possible he's kind of mailing this weekend? He went to the basketball game just because he's not that into this one? I don't know. I didn't love that. And I don't love the feeling of Tom Brady. If you look hard at it, it's like nobody will give him credit for what he's done. And I argue he's even more clutch than Michael Jordan. I'm the biggest Jordan fan, but Jordan was too good for his own good. He was the most dominant player ever, so he never even faced a Game 7 in winning 6 NBA championships and 6 Finals MVPs. But Tom Brady, think about this. Nobody ever talks about it. 5 times he's won Super Bowls, all 5 times with fourth quarter game-winning drives for field goals or touchdowns. All 5 times. Think about that. That's impossibly great. Does anybody give him credit for it? No, they just shrug it off like, well, whatever. He did this, he did. No one gives him. He's too soft for most people. Most of the debaters I go up against on Undisputed, again, 9:30 to noon Eastern, Fox Sports 1, they just see him as he's not in the right package. I always call him the assassin in sheep's clothes. You watch the episodes of Tom versus Time, and he's not manly enough. He's not macho enough. Big controversy. Oldest son kissing him on the lips. How old's the kid, like 8? I don't know. That's his business. But they, others look at it like that's not how. That's the franchise quarterback, the big stud quarterback. It's just not how you behave. Did you advertise UGG boots worn by teenage girls? You advertise betting? What? Betting? Really? Like BEDDING, not betting. It's just Brady. It's just how he is. But once he gets on the football field, I think he's pretty macho. I think he's pretty manly. I think he's pretty tough. That guy, Psycho Tom, who comes out, he's just the clutchest player ever I've ever seen in any sport. But my point is, when is that magic, or as Von Miller called it the other day, that voodoo, when is it going to run out? So I think it's going to be a very close game. And is it one more time? Could he do it for... Remember, I'm not even counting. He actually had another game-winning fourth quarter drive against Eli in the first Super Bowl. He went 80 yards in 12 plays. 80 in 12 and threw a 6-yard touchdown pass to Randy Moss with 2:42 left in the game. And it should have stood up 14-10. Comeback by Tom Brady. And he got Tyreed. And last year at the Super Bowl, Eli called it. He said he agreed with me. It's the luckiest play in the history of the Super Bowl. He just basically, he doesn't know how he escaped 3 potential sacks because he's not that mobile. And he just flung it. I think he basically closed his eyes and flung it as far as he could and hoped that one of his guys managed to catch it. And he went up and Tyree sort of stuck it in his face mask on Rodney Harrison. I still don't know how he did it. But he did. And that was it. That set up pass to Plaxico that won the game. So Tom Brady did it 6 times in his 7 Super Bowls. And he made one bad throw. I always have acknowledged this. I said it the next day on ESPN. He made one bad throw that should have been caught by Wes Welker. They were up 17-15, and he hit Welker up the seam with the ball, threw it on the outside as the safety came over on the inside, and he threw it to the wrong side for Wes Welker. He was expecting it to his left, and it was to his right, so he had to twist in the air. And it was a little high and outside. It wasn't the most accurate throw by Tom Brady. But the point is, Wes Welker should have caught that. If he did, we'd be having another conversation, because that would be another Super Bowl, because they would have won that one if he makes that catch. Hard catch, catchable. So I get nervous because all the motivation is on Philly's side. They've been dared by Belichick and Brady this week. And at some point, is the voodoo magic going to run out for Tom Brady? I mean, he is human. I don't care if he's 40, he plays like he's 22, but at some point, can he pull off... the way I boil this game down is Philly's just a better football team. They're just a better overall football team. If you look at the defensive efficiency stats, I know the Patriots wound up 5th in scoring defense, but they're 31st in defensive efficiency, which is just terrible. So Nick Foles is going to have some success against their defense. He just will. And yet, I don't know, maybe Brady can go no huddle. It looked like Eli had a lot of success in both the Giants games just going fast. And nobody can play faster than the Patriots if they choose to. So I hope they choose to from the start, and maybe that'll be the difference in the game. But if Brady is forced to do it again on this stage against that defense, I mean, he did it to the Legion of Boom, and he did it to the Atlanta defense that was, at that point, according to everybody, the hottest defense in pro football. And then he did it to Saxonville. Can he do it again to the Eagles? Man, that's a tall order. So I'm just a little nervous the night before that it's just like too good to be true, because Philly has all the motivation, none of the pressure. The bets are pouring in on Philadelphia, the big bets. Obviously, there have been, I think, 6 big $1 million bets on Philadelphia, and I get it. I don't disagree with the premise of it. if you get 4.5 points, I don't disagree. I'd be closing my eyes because you're betting against the one guy I wouldn't bet against. But I'm still a little nervous, but I'm going to hang in there. It might be a little higher scoring than I think, but I'll stick with it for now. I will look forward to revisiting this tomorrow, maybe in the hour before the game. I'm still going 20-17 Patriots. I'm still happy for Terrell Owens getting into the Hall of Fame, but he would not be in my Hall of Fame. I'm very happy for Randy Moss, who was just transcendent to me, getting in the Hall of Fame on first ballot. But fair is fair. He shouldn't have gotten in on his first ballot if Terrell took 3. Sorry. And I'm happy for Brian Dawkins. I'm very happy for our guy Ray Lewis, one of our mainstays on Undisputed. Again, you can see us 9:30 to noon Eastern Time on Fox Sports 1. Who did I forget? Bobby Beathard. I used to know him when he ran the Redskins. Who else? Jerry Kramer got in as a veteran. It's a long time coming. My great late friend Dick Schaap tried to campaign to get him in before he was on the veterans ballot, but I think he got in, as I recall. I'm just off the top of my head. So congratulations to them, and go Brady. That's all I got to say. One more time. We'll see. I'll talk to you tomorrow, Facebook, in the hour before the game. Thank you for watching, and congratulations, Terrell Owens. Good night, Facebook.